So the stars were out. These stars were out. Dallas stopped. Now, this is not like an L.A. or New York crowd. The stars now, that's Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes was there. And Derrick Henry. Now, that's that. And Dirk Nowitzki. That's who they showed. Big stars. Huge stars. So it was all about Luka. He did some hookah before the game, I think. Maybe not. I don't know. But Luka Dončić went out there, had a massive first half. Didn't do much in the second half. He ended up with 45 points in his first game, almost like it was scripted, back in Dallas since being traded to La La Land. And so Luka went out there, had a big stat line. The Lakers will be in the playoffs, but probably not for long, but they wrapped up a playoff spot. Luka Dončić, his return 2 months after the wacky tobacco trade out of thin air, so bad that people are convinced that there was some funny business going on, there was some maneuvering behind the scenes, that television executives were involved, and this was all about getting more money in the TV contract. But he went out to L.A. He spent 5.5 seasons with the Mavericks. Most assumed that he would just be there the rest of his career, or at least the good years of his career. Still had 2 years left on his contract. So the 45 points matching Luka's season high. Okay. Whoopie damn do. Also had 8 rebounds, 6 assists, 4 steals, and a partridge in a pear tree. But it was the old geezer, Bron, who led the way there to the finish line. He had 13 of his 27 points down the stretch in the fourth quarter. So the Lakers, who did fall behind, how embarrassing is that? You're trailing. They were trailing in the fourth quarter. I couldn't name 3 guys on the Mavericks who are playing right now. And the Lakers were actually losing this game at one point in the fourth quarter to the flotsam and jetsam, the dreck of the Dallas Mavericks. How embarrassing. And then they rallied back. But, man, even to be trailing in the fourth quarter, holy crap. Man, you suck. All right, so let us discuss the question. Let's just forget about the game. Who cares about the game? Let's focus in on the sidebar because it's all about the sidebar. So let's play a fun fill-in-the-blank game. Everyone loves a fill-in-the-blank game. I do. You do. Okay. Now I'm going to go first because I have the microphone. And then I'll give out the number in a little bit, and you can call up and you can fill in the blank on your own end. So here's the fill-in-the-blank game. Right? Luka Dončić's emotional return to Dallas was blank. Right? Fill in the blank. So I've got Stephen King, Kitty Cat, and Fly Swatter. And we will combine all of these things together, and we are going to refuse to budge an inch while we make some cowboy boots and hats. Giant cowboy hats and cowboy boots. Yeah. All right, so my word is schmaltzy. That is my word, schmaltzy. Luka Dončić's return, his emotional return to Dallas was schmaltzy. For me, it was uncomfortable. Now, I understand. I'm in the minority. This was not for me. I get it. This tribute was for the emotionally wounded Dallas Maverick observer. Nevertheless, way too sappy. Way too P.U. What is that? Sap. This 2-minute montage that played on the jump. If you loved him so much, why'd you trade him? I mean, it's so stupid. It's like he died. But they're on the Jumbotron for 2 minutes. Felt like 2 hours, highlighting Luka's journey from being drafted. And he was, of course, traded, famous draft trade in 2018, Atlanta and Dallas, and then leading the team to not win a championship and lose in the NBA Finals. And you had the full circle of life, like the Lion King back in the day of the NBA. They had the highlights of him as a rookie, the big playoff shot. Of course, I didn't see any highlights of him when he lost to the Clippers multiple times, Luka, in the playoffs. Real heartstring tugging music. It was like a Hallmark movie. But in many ways, this experience for the Dallas basketball team on the court and all together, it was like a Stephen King novel meets religious revival. It's Pet Sematary, a horror story. The Mavericks experience the chilling consequences of bringing a loved one back to life from the other side, and just not quite the same. Not quite the same. Hookah Luka. Now, he had the great awakening, right? You had the awakening there for the Dallas fan. You had the passionate sermon, the rhythmic chanting that was taking place there. It was kind of like a house of worship. And there were testimonials of divine experiences that Luka did and all of that. It was like a healing session. It was therapeutic. Now, page 2 here. So the Dallas fans were in a tizzy. It was I mentioned the rhythmic chanting. Fire Nico! Fire Nico! Yeah! Fire Nico! Yeah, back and back. All right, went on and on like that. But it was a vortex of outrage. So my question is, how should the Maverick ownership deal with the upheaval from the natives on Luka Doncic's return to the scene of the crime? So much like a kitty cat, here kitty, like a kitty cat, with a Cheshire cat smile from ear to ear. If you're the Dallas Mavericks ownership, you've won. Let me explain why. All right? That spark is still there. The spark has not left the building. And over my years of gasbaggery, the one constant, going back to my early days and still alive and well today, is the thing that you cannot have, the thing that is the kill shot in the business of entertainment, the business of professional sports, is the A word, apathy. And there was no apathy. I didn't see any apathy at all. I saw no apathy in that building in Dallas. I saw engagement. I saw raw emotion. I saw all that. But when apathy happens, when that creeps in, you're cooked, right? And people in sports don't care if you love them or even if you hate them. As long as you're interested, just stay interested. And they got you by the balls. They've got you by the balls. The apathetic fan, the apathy of the fan base, that leads to fewer tickets being sold, less merch being sold, more importantly, lower television ratings, which means the advertisers pay less for the commercials, and just a general lackluster cloud hanging over your team. So there's none of that. Now, does that happen? Is this going to settle in where the Dallas team blows for years to come and then we have that? Possibly. But at this point, there were a lot of people that looked like they still cared about the Mavericks, and they were upset because of the trade. And so if you own the team, you're like, oh, okay, I don't care if you're upset with me as long as you watch the games on TV and you're supporting our sponsors. All right, now, last word here. So the Mavericks tried to line up some sponsorship deals. We heard about this in the lead up to the game. I don't know if you saw this or not. Maybe not. I was bouncing around the echo chamber. I thought it was interesting and worth a mention. So the Mavericks tried to line up some sponsorship deals, we were told. They were trying to line them up with some Luka brand partners. Get that money. Get that dumb money, right? And it's return game, so they thought they'd do some cross-promotion and mix in some of Luka's business partners. It turns out, though, that the Luka Marching and Chowder Society said no bueno, and they rejected the idea. So what intrigues you the most about this wrinkle in the story that Luka's advisors said no, ixnay on the advertisers, get your own advertisers. So Hookah Luka, in the cartoon bubble on my top of my head here, went out and got a fly swatter. Took a fly swatter, and he treated the Mavericks like a pesky insect. He whacked them. Right? Whacked them with the fly swatter, and it's absolutely fair game. It is fair game. Financially, while Luka will make a lot more money from endorsements wearing that ugly purple and gold jersey and having all the fanboys and historians of the Lakers buy all his crap, that's true. The other part of it, though, on-court earnings, Dallas did him dirty. They did him dirty. I've done the Maller math on this. I believe I'm correct. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But by the trade, the Mavericks, if my math is correct, cost Luka around $100 million by trading him rather than giving him the super-duper ooper max, the ooey-gooey max contract with all the extra zeros on it. But since he's traded, the most he can get is like $100 million. I think he'll be okay. I'm pretty sure we don't need to have a bake sale or a GoFundMe for Luka. But still, $100 million is money that you're not going to be able to get that you would have gotten if you had just stayed with Dallas. And now to think the Mavericks had the chutzpah to go out and try to get another money grab by riding the coattails of Luka. And the deal fell apart after, again, Luka's his posse declined to give its blessing and said, Ixnay on the DLA, as we said there. And they also said, which is kind of amusing, they noted that he now plays for a different team other than the Mavericks. So, like, what are we doing here? They did give out some T-shirts. I understand some of those are already on the resale market. So if you want to buy one, you can go on the eBay and pick up one of your shirts. I don't know that's worth that much. I'm sure there's some sports memorabilia people out there that, it's actually worth it. You save it and put it in a box, and he goes to the Hall of Fame. Oh, man, watch out. One of the stories that everyone's talking about, it's a bit of a sidebar, but it's the words, use your words, of Jason Kidd, the Maverick coach Jason Kidd, who raised some eyebrows with his commentary on the situation involving Luka. So if you didn't hear what he said, perhaps not. Jason Kidd told reporters that some are comparing Luka, the trade the Mavericks made with the Lakers, which really wasn't a trade. He said, Jason Kidd, that they've compared it to the Babe Ruth trade. And then Kidd said, which is kind of cool. He said it's kind of cool, referring to the infamous decision to sell Babe Ruth's contract. The Red Sox made that decision to the Yankees in 1920 for $100,000 in cash. So let us discuss the question. Jason Kidd saying that Luka's trade from the Mavericks to the Lakers being compared to Babe Ruth is, quote, kind of cool. So how do you decode this one? I've got Fumblerooski, Roger Clemens, and hemorrhoids. And we will combine all of these things together and attempt to not be the ghost at the feast. We're going to try not to be the ghost at the feast. All right, so first of all, does this not sound awkward? Am I the only one? Am I the only one in the room where this sounds awkward? I don't think it's awkward, Ben. What are you talking about? It's awkward. It is awkward. Let me explain. It's red meat in the lion's den or red meat at the kiddie table. Because while publicly the narrative has been that Jason Kidd was not involved in the decision-making process and was informed of the trade only after it had been almost complete. So it was like the 11th hour, and then Jason Kidd, they told him about it. Privately, there have always been murmurs since the trade went down that there was something else going on. A mirror universe, if you will. Mirror, mirror on the wall. An alternative reality in which Jason Kidd had high-ranking conversations with Nico Harrison and actually advocated that something needed to change with Luka. Now, maybe not a trade, but he wasn't happy with Luka and all that stuff. Now, that aside, looking at the Babe Ruth trade, we don't know the outcome. If you do a side-by-side comparison with the Luka trade, we don't know how this is going to turn out. Luka, he could go out and just fall off the wagon. But the Red Sox, if you go back to that time, in 1920, the guy that owned the Red Sox was a theatrical producer. And there was a lot of money in that back in those days. But he was also about to go bankrupt because of things that were going on outside of baseball. But he had problems in baseball, too. He bought the Red Sox. I've read a couple of books about this because I'm a loser. And so this guy bought the Red Sox in like 4 years early, 1916, I think it was. But he bought it with borrowed money, which is always a bad thing. When somebody, even going back then, 100-plus years ago, when you buy something with borrowed money, it means you likely don't have enough money if you're running a business to pay for the people in the business. And so he was having all kinds of problems. The debt was skyrocketing. So he sold Babe Ruth, the biggest star, for $100,000. Now, in today's money, that would be $1.5 million in today's money. And he also got a $300,000 loan from the guy that owned the Yankees at the time. And that that helped pay the mortgage. He would have gone bankrupt on Fenway Park. Can you imagine? Well, back then it was just a normal ballpark. Nobody thought, well, it's kind of stupid. They have that green wall now, and now it's revered because it's been around forever. But the Red Sox also claimed at the time, much like the Luka trade, if you go back and you read the books about it, the Red Sox knew that Babe Ruth was popular, and baseball was a big thing in America and a big thing in Boston at that time. So they claimed they traded Babe Ruth because he was out of control on the field. He was womanizing. He was drinking too much. And he had a major issue with the manager of the Red Sox, this guy named Ed Barrow, I believe was his name. He also had an issue, Babe Ruth, with the owner. And I didn't know about this until I read one of these dopey books. But Babe Ruth, he actually briefly retired from the Red Sox. He was at loggerheads with the owner. And he retired from baseball to play golf. It's not a story that's talked about much, but you can look it up. I'm not making it up. He briefly retired to play golf. And that was after, I think it was like the year before he was traded, or maybe that off season before he was traded. So anyway, get to the point, please. How does this all relate to Luka? So my hypothesis, the Mavericks have done similar things. While they're not saying that Luka is, they're not hitting all those points. They are. I didn't hear the womanizing thing, but the rest of it I heard was that Luka's uncontrollable. He's uncoachable. He's got that I'm better than everyone syndrome and all that stuff. And he is out there partying with the hookah, the drinking and all that. He's not taking care of himself. Very similar to the playbook the Red Sox used when they got rid of Babe Ruth. All right, so my hypothesis, the Luka Dončić trade is trending to be worse than the Babe Ruth trade. Here's why. All right? The Red Sox, when they got rid of Babe Ruth, they did it because the owner had to get the money. The Mavericks, the people that own the Mavericks, the gambling family, they don't need the money. They didn't do this for money. They did it for some other reason. Now, the theory is that the NBA meddled, somebody from television meddled, or that Nico Harrison is the village idiot. But either way, it is a fumble rooski is what it is. It's an unforced error.